Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our special webinar for Proteins to Products, where we'll explore why and how proteins are essential ingredients for achieving biomimicry in plant-based products. I'm Avishag, Science and Technology Manager at GFI Israel, and I'm delighted to host Asaf Cohen-Yonatan, who will present on this important topic. The main challenge in plant-based product is to achieve taste and texture parity with animal product. There are various ways to approach this challenge, and today's webinar will focus on the role of proteins. During the session, Asaf will cover topics such as what is biomimicry, why and how proteins are key ingredients in achieving biomimicry goals, and what protein traits contribute to creating high-quality plant-based products. Asaf is a food engineer with over 15 years of experience in the Israeli industry and startups, and he is the founder and CEO of his own company, which develops plant-based products. Asaf, the floor is yours.
So, hello everyone. My name is Asaf. Pleased to meet you. Thank you, Avishag, for the introduction. There are many advantages to consume plant-based products over animal-based ones, such as sustainability, reducing the environmental impact, health and nutritional benefits, and of course, ethical consideration and care for animals. However, there are still significant challenges in transitioning to plant-based diet. One of the main ones being biomimicking, which we will discuss today. Today I will explain how to mimic the properties of a food product, focusing on the concepts of biomimicry and functionality, and how this is achieved, how we can replicate the characteristic of a final product. We will discuss about proteins and why they are key components in this process, and then I will connect the methods of using proteins to achieve similarity and mimicry in products. Of course, I will address a few additional considerations along the way. So let's start with biomimicry, imitation, and functionality. So what is biomimicry? Biomimicry is a practice of mimicking the strategies found in nature to solve human design challenges. In our context of a food plant-based product, it refers to mimicking the functional properties of a product that originates from a different source. What is functionality? This is the collection of chemical and physical properties of a food product that define its behavior during processing, shelf life, consumption, and cooking. So, for example, solubility, emulsification, gelation, water holding capacity, and more, which we will elaborate later. In simple words, it replicates animal-based products with plant-based alternatives. So, how do we approach this? There are a few principles or considerations in biomimicry. Marketing professionals suggest that we are not here to educate the market. We are at an important point, introducing a big and positive change towards plant-based products with all the benefits we've mentioned before, but consumers need time to adjust. So one way to ease this transition is through blended products, a combination of animal-based products with plant-based components. In this product, the plant-based part mimic the properties of the animal-based elements. Products must meet consumer expectation without compromise. Also on price, that consumer noticed even before tasting the product, and of course on other factors such as taste, texture, and nutritional profile. These are challenges that are yet to be fully solved. And in this reason, and the need of biomimicry. Another consideration is expanding the choices available to future generations by creating products that naturally became a default options for them to choose. So the challenge remains creating product with the same properties as animal-based products without using animal-derived components. So the question is, what do we aim to mimic? So what are we mimicking and how we do it? We mimic several aspects. We mimic sensory properties, organoleptic ones, flavors, aroma, texture, color, cooking behavior, and so. We mimic the functional properties, the chemical and physical behavior, structure and composition, and nutritional values, digestibility, amino acid composition, essential nutrients like B12, omega-3, minerals, and so. We aim to mimic the final product and recognize various perspectives in defining what we replicate, meaning from the consumer point of view, the definition would be searching for juiciness in meat or the clean taste of milk. But professional point of view will dip a bit further, and there would be the understanding that meat is a mix of muscle and fat, each with specific properties, forming a unique blend. Milk, for example, would be an emulsion of oil and water that has a specific texture, whiteness, and buttery flavor. From researchers' point of view, we analyze it even further, analyzing the proteins in the muscle, fat's melting point, and fat's composition of fatty acids, milk's structural stability created by natural protein and fat interplay. So the way we analyze the characteristics and different in point of views is the key to the mimicking step. So while solving existing problems by mimicking, new challenges arise. For instance, meat color changes differently during cooking, or milk curdles in coffee. So we must analyze it very carefully and precisely. So how do we mimic these characteristics? We mimic them through three main levels. The first and the one that we will be focused today is the first one, functional ingredients, the composition and structure of ingredients, primarily proteins, by understanding the natural source and its primary structure, and analyze how structure and composition impact the properties of the final product. Second level of mimicking is through the recipes, the formulation, combining diverse ingredients to create a new properties like emulsion, and of course the synergy between components such as proteins and minerals, enhancing, for example, the gelation. The third level would be machinery and process, protein extraction, we will mention it later, and preparation of raw material like extrusion or homogenization, and of course the entire final product process. So we've understood what we are trying to mimic in biomimicry, and now we will explain the importance of protein and its connection to the product properties. So why protein? Protein contains amino acids that the body must receive from external source, unlike starches and other things that are not essential for survival. Additionally, protein usually doesn't pose an issue with excess in the body, so which it highlights the essential nature of mimicking a complete protein. From technological perspective, protein is multifunctional. Many of the main fundamental properties of the final product derives from protein. So not only that, but it changes significantly even into kind of a new material when exposed to chemical or physical force like pH changes, intense mixing, heat. Its structure enable diverse chemical reactions and exceptional mimicry abilities. Other plant-based food ingredients offer many functions, but plant proteins still lack enough functionality. Many key functional proteins like gelatin, albumin, and collagen still coming from animals. For example, I know how to bring plant-based cheese, but all the existing cheeses today are not protein-based. They use starches and stabilizers to bind the fat and create a similar texture. but the protein is not present, at least in significant amount, and it doesn't rely on the property of curd formation, the coagulation. So the protein is simply missing. Other ingredients matter, but are not the main focus. For example, milk is made of oil and water, and there's no really added value. Even its stabilization is usually not clean label and relies on starch or other stabilizers, not proteins. So now let's explore the functional properties of protein. So to align ourselves, let's briefly go over the structure of protein. They are a primary structure with a unique sequence of amino acids, protein folding, and tertiary structure that is the protein we usually work with and are familiar with. So amino acid or their side groups extend from the protein structure and define the charges on it and the possibilities for chemical reactions. So they determine the functional properties of the protein and from there the many possibilities for mimicking the product's properties. So there is also the quaternary structure where multiple proteins associate. This is seen in coagulation, which depends again on the tertiary structure and amino acid charges. The charges on the protein coming from its side group determine most of its properties and functionality. So by understanding the connection between protein structure and its behavior, we can achieve properties like solubility, dispersion, viscosity, all the list that you can see here, gelation, emulsification, foaming, oil and water retention, and all this list here. It's important to remember that each property has an optimal level depending on the food product. For example, I don't always need the strongest gel. Sometimes I need a softer one, like egg whites or excessive foaming. It's great for coffee, but can disruptive in other processes. So we've understood the importance of protein, and now let's dive into the functionality of each of the properties. So solubility is one of the most important properties a protein can have. It is defined as the ability of a substance, a solute, to dissolve in a solvent. There is a chemical bond between the substance and the solvent. The more charged amino acid exposed in the protein's tertiary structure, the better it binds to water, increasing solubility. So solubility depends on the product's pH because hydrogen ions compete for the reactions with these binding sites. So how does solubility affect a product? It influences taste dispersion. When the protein dissolves well, its taste spread evenly. It improves gel formation. Higher solubility make it easier to create a gel. This case showing a link between different functional properties. We will show it later. It reduces grittiness. When dissolved, the protein feels smoother on the tongue. However, heating can change the protein structure and lower its solubility and make it gritty again. Dispersion is the opposite of solubility. It refers to a substance being spread out in another, usually solid in a liquid. There is no chemical bond between the substance and the liquid, so when a protein is not soluble, we need a method to prevent settling. So particle size is also important to avoid a gritty texture. If the particles are small enough, the protein, like protein powder, can be added directly without changing the structure, and it will simply be dispersed. How this show up in product properties. So it creates a cloudy or opaque appearance and changes the color of the product. It allows the protein for protein enrichment without adding gritty texture. Again, if we know how to grind it to small particles. So for protein that are not solubles but are needed for other qualities like being non-allergenic or clean tasting, um, we can grind them finely or fold them or encapsulate them in a gel. And then we can easily add them to a product and gain their quality. So being able to use insoluble proteins expands our ability to create products with new properties we might not have considered before. Gelation. So gelation is when a liquid turns into a gel, solid or semi-solid that holds liquid inside. Proteins like gelatin for meat, cheese, or eggs have this property. Their structure determines how well they form gels, hold the water, and coagulate. For example, a strong gel creates a bite that resists chewing. So keeping water inside and adding a juicy feel will contribute for the juiciness. It can mimic fat, muscle, connective tissues, or give a glossy look. So the gel holds a lot of liquid and its structure can be controlled for properties like density and strength. It can trap not just water, but other substance like fat or emulsion. So here you can see that researchers have made a gelatin substitute from pea protein. They created gummy candies, showing the importance of proteins for a chewy texture. Emulsification. Emulsification is when two liquids like oil and water are mixed to form a stable blend. So protein can bind both water and oil, making them great emulsifiers that replace other stabilizers. For example, instead of using water and oil alone, proteins can stabilize and create an emulsion, and to add juiciness with different texture. So the amino acid define the hydrophobic balance and the ability to stabilize the emulsion. So it helps create a smooth, creamy mouthfeel and disperse flavor better. So regarding flavors, you can better disperse it, whether they are water or oil soluble flavors. Emulsion control properties like meltability, water release, and fat liquid separation during cooking. So stabilizing the emulsion can improve the product's shelf life, sometimes making it easier to keep stable than separate oil and water. Water holding capacity is the ability of a substance like a protein to retain water without releasing it under pressure, heat, or stirring. For example, textured vegetable protein, like soy flakes soaked in water, absorb water and can be pressed to release it. The amount and way it releases water during cooking, this is the water holding capacity. This affects the product's juiciness and texture and depends on the protein source and process, in this case meaning the extrusion. Water retention is key for maintaining the moisture, improving the texture, reducing the shrinkage, and extending shelf life. So it also affects the final product's cost also because it binds more water, or when roasting, proteins help to hold water, preventing burning and drying, especially in plant-based products. Oil holding capacity, so similar to water retention, proteins can also hold fat, known as oil holding capacity. Certain proteins have side groups that form hydrophobic bonds, and by looking at the hydrophilic hydrophobic balance, we can predict the protein's ability to bind fat. Fat holding depends heavily on the type of fat, but also on the protein structure and solubility. Fat retention can provide a shiny appearance a fatty mouthfeel, juiciness, and preventing the fat from leaking out during cooking or during shelf life. Neutrality. So is neutrality a characteristic? So the answer is yes. Neutrality is the absence of undesirable properties like strong taste or strong color. Sometimes when I discover a substance with a specific property, I usually want to use it. But if we need to add protein that does not affect the product, we would look for a neutral protein. This is where neutrality become significant. Um, you can maybe compare it to like maltodextrin, which is mostly a filler with no strong functionality. So for many products, a neutral protein in taste and texture and functionality can be useful. It allows us to enrich the product with more protein without changing the overall product too much. Viscosity is the thickness or resistance of a liquid to flow, which depends on temperature. So protein can increase the viscosity of a substance, making it thicker. Also during cooking, because of the depends on temperature. So it can replace starches or stabilizer to control creaminess or thickness, like in rich spreads. Viscosity can also help stabilize emulsion and prevent them from breaking down. But is it possible to add protein without changing viscosity too much? So viscosity gives a body sensation, what we call, creating a rich, a heavy texture. It also helps to control the melting process and the release of liquid from the product. This is useful for products like fat replacers, shakes, dairy, egg substitutes, and more where thickness is needed. Foaming. Okay, so foaming is when air or gas is mixed into liquid, forming bubbles surrounded by a thin layer of liquid. Proteins can stabilize the foam, trapping the air and holding it in place. Two key terms for foam quality are foam capacity and foam stability. However, I don't think foam is always desirable. It can weaken the texture, especially if air pockets interfere with creating a dense and firm product. So for example, when mixing an oil water emulsion, introducing foam can cause problems. So foaming is useful in products like milk and eggs, where it can create a light, airy texture or improved color by scattering the light. However, in meat alternatives, too much foam can hinder the process by preventing the liquid formation. Remember that foamed emulsion are more fragile and can lead also to texture breakdown, affecting the product stability over time and during shelf life, and so. So a brief demonstration of some of the properties we've discussed and how they appear in the lab. Here we have three solutions. A and B are the same protein, different concentrations. B and C are different proteins, but the same concentrations. So we can see here how some of the properties we've discussed are reflected. Solubility is evident in the clear appearance of the solutions. The color depends on the protein's nature and concentration. Foam capacity is shown by the foam height, and foam stability is observed by how the foam holds up over time. So the video also emphasized the importance of using different measurement methods, whether scientific or based on your own protocols. Sometimes simply creating the final product can be the easiest way to test for desired properties. or you can always rely on further researchers to refine the properties of the final product. We have covered the main functional properties, most of which come from the protein itself. We have seen how these properties help mimic the characteristic of different products. Now let's quickly review a few more important points, and then we can conclude. So when adding protein to a product, one of the key motivation is its nutritional value, especially the amino acids the body needs. The cost of the protein also affect the final product price, so which impacts very about the consumer affordability. So it's crucial to understand if we are going to use a rare or exotic protein source that may be harder to obtain. Some other important points to remember is that manufacturing process can change the protein structure, affecting its functionality. So it's wise to plan the process from the start. For researchers in early stages, it's essential to consider the protein extraction process. The way protein is extracted can alter its properties. So this needs to be considered in advance. And extraction methods can also impact whether the protein remains natural or not, which has regulatory implications. So all of this should be considered. Let's watch a video that shows how different extraction methods and structure can produce various properties from the same protein source. So in the video, we can see two different proteins extracted from the same potato source, but with different extraction methods and different structure of the protein. So you can see the protein on the left forms well and forms an emulsion gel with a particular texture. The protein on the right increases viscosity, creates an emulsion, and has a slightly different forming properties with other differences. You can see these variations highlights how the extraction method and structure can impact the protein functionality. So, in conclusion, biomimicry in food starts with the plant source and the protein functionality. Working with food involves sensory evaluation, cooking, and science. Therefore, when defining a product, it should be approached both as a craft and scientifically. So researching protein functionality is crucial. It opens endless challenges and opportunities. There is much room for discovering new proteins and improving existing ones. Many proteins still needs to be properly characterized and integrated into products. So for me, as an application engineer, there is a great potential in exploring raw materials and proteins that are missing key properties. From here, I can wish you all success in your fields and hope you create new possibilities and amazing technological advancements. So thank you very much for listening.